She is a multi-talented actress who has appeared on several classic television shows, including Mr. Terrific, Bob Hope Presents, the Chrysler Theater, beloved westerns like Laredo, and The Virginian, as well as Ironside, The Bold Ones, and The Streets of San Francisco. Her feature films include The First and Best Airport, and They Live. She also just happens to be the daughter of the iconic writer-producer Dick Wesson, who with Paul Henning wrote and produced and or directed some of television's most beloved programs of all time, including Burns and Allen, Love That Bob, Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and Petticoat Junction, a personal favorite of mine, which opens with one of the most beloved TV theme songs of all time. Charming, charismatic, sophisticated, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Eileen Wesson. Hi, thank you so much. You look so beautiful. So I think we're good with this one. I don't know how good that one is, but check it. So tell us about your early appearances on classic TV.
I started out as a contract player at Universal Studios, and I was lucky. I was the last of the actors that they were working with and honing, going through the star system. So I showed up every day at Universal, and I learned from the best. All my makeup was the Westmore boys. And then my dad, who happened to be working on the lot at the same time I'm there, told me every day to go up and get all the guys in the stunt department to teach me how to rope and ride and take a cigarette out of somebody's mouth with a bullwhip. You know, all these things that you really need to do. So I learned makeup, I learned lighting, I worked with every single other producer, director, and actor that was under contract at that time at Universal, and I had Edith Head dressing me. Wow. So it was the best experience that I could ever have, because I was learning like a sponge every single day they offered a 7-year contract, and every 3 months though I was renewed, so they kept us on a tight leash. And Marvin, when you talk about the money that you made, because I was under 21 at the time, I made $135 a week. But they took 1 week away from me because I was under 21, and they were putting it into a U.S. savings bond, because that was the child protective laws at the time, and they didn't know that I was only living on yogurt and that I needed another $135 a week just to make it. So all of the TV shows that were going on, or the movies that were going on at Universal, I did. And I worked with so many wonderful people, and one of them was Mickey Rooney. He was making a movie at the time called The Return of the Yellow Tornado at Universal. It was starring Eddie Mayhoff, Mickey Rooney, and myself. It was a spoof takeoff on all of the Batman and Superman TV series that were going on. The premise of this show, though, is that Mickey is playing Dickie Boy's part, and Eddie Mayhoff is playing Adam West's part as Batman, and these two men and the costumes that they wore were they were like gag jokes just showing up. So I was the niece to Eddie Mayhoff, because they needed some kind of a foil and some kind of a straight person to balance out these two brilliant comics. So I was blown away and could hardly get my lines in, because they never stayed to script. They would pick up they'd get ideas for these scenes, and then they'd say, wait a minute, we got another idea. Let's run it again. And then they would, and I'm going, I know I have lines in here somewhere. So I learned how to be able to hold my own with two really powerful actors. I learned it because I grew up with a dad who was a comic, and when I was a very, very, very young child, my dad was a wild man and never came home. So my mother learned that if she put me in the front seat of the car when he went out to play golf, or when he went out on the weekends, wherever he went, if he had a kid in the front seat, he'd have to come home, because eventually I had to get to bed. So I learned everything to do about the business, because I was a little kid going everywhere with my father. I went places no kids would go. I went to pick up money for the mafia. I was the little kid in the room, so that I became the buffer, and they would beat the you-know-what out of each other, but they wouldn't kill each other in front of the kid. So I really saw a whole side of comics and the genius that they were, and fell in love with all of them, and was terrified of all of them at the same time. They were magical to me, and I adored them, but they were terrifying because they had no rules, and they got to do anything they wanted because they were so loved by so many people. So it's why I became a quick study. I learned when to disappear and when to never ever repeat anything that I saw. So my dad thought it was great that I went everywhere with him, because I never told on him. I already had a story rehearsed to tell my mom when I came home. So Mother would drill me and say, "Where'd you go?" I had it all planned. And I had memorized the story so many times that it made it easy for me to memorize scripts, because I was just memorizing a story to protect my dad so he didn't get in trouble. But then I realized I'm just playing a part. And so playing parts and playing other types of roles and women became very easy for me, because I was already playing roles as a little kid growing up. But the one with Mickey Rooney and Eddie Mayhoff was just so exciting to be on the set with them and to watch them interact with each other. And the thing about performers that I love, I mean, we've just heard all these beautiful speakers come up and share their stories, is that when you see their genius and you get to fall in love with that part of them, they share their essence and the best part of them with you, and they leave you with something. They all leave you with something that is wonderfully magical and inspiring. And all the movies that my dad did influenced people to choose specific careers based on the character that he played. So when I was doing the movie with Eddie Mayhoff and Mickey Rooney, I got to watch two men fall in love with each other because they loved working so much that the chemistry and the way that performers, when they're cast the right way, and they're cast being able to not have any boundaries and no limits placed on them, so that they offer the best that they have, is so wonderful. You feel like you had a great dinner. You feel inspired by watching performers. That's why I became an actor, because I wanted to be able to enjoy playing like that with other creative people.
What were some of your favorite classic TV shows that you worked on in particular? Any special shows stand out? Any particular moments on the set with any star? Carl Malden, Michael Douglas?
So I got to do the first airplane movie, and that was unique because there were no location shots. Everything was done inside the cockpit and the body of this plane. So all of the people that were in the movie were all hanging out together on one set. So I met everybody in the cast. A lot of times when you're doing a movie, you never really meet the full cast because they're shooting somewhere else. Your character doesn't interact with them, so you never meet the whole cast. But the cast of Airplane was everybody who was crammed in one soundstage in this airplane. And so it was my first part, and I was playing a young teenage girl. I was playing a nanny, and so I had to keep charge of this little kid. And the deal was that the stars all had written in their contracts that they were guaranteed to have so many minutes on film. So we had Dean Martin, and we had
Yes, I know you've been saying airplane, but you meant airport.
Airport.
Okay, airplane was a. Okay.
Thank you.
Quite a different film.
Thank you. Yeah, sure is a good one. Thank you. Thank you. And so all of the people inside the airplane had little individual stories and cameos, but we were all cut out because the stars had agreed to have a certain amount of minutes left on film. So you didn't really get to know anybody inside the airplane. So, but the fun part was to be able to learn and just watch how Helen Hayes worked. Coming from her theater background, she had a whole different process than, say, Dean Martin, who was, used to being in front of an audience and getting the feedback from the audience as to when to make his subtle adjustments. So everyone's process was very different. That was wonderful to watch. The next thing that I did was a movie called Winning with Paul Newman. It was about race cars, and that's when he was making a big transition in his own life and changing a lot of the things that he was doing for his hobbies and going from acting a lot into motor car racing. So I was flown to Indianapolis where the Indianapolis 500 was going on, and I played the part of a little girl that he picks up at the bar. I'm a blonde, and I run around basically in the whole movie in a bathing suit because that was just what they wanted for the character. But I was the only woman that was on location. It was all men, all motors, all cars, all guys, just guys everywhere, and all guys talking about motors. So when I get there, I arrive at the mess hall, which has about 300 people in it, long tables, and there's only one place left for me to sit down and get a burger and eat. So I do. And I sit down, and I've got this little hamburger, and there's men everywhere. They're all engaged with each other, and the man across from me is reading a newspaper. And he is just busy reading a newspaper, and I see that he's got the mustard and the ketchup, and I say, "Excuse me, sir, can you pass the mustard and the ketchup?" No response. And so I am asking these other men, "Can I have the mustard? Can I have the ketchup?" And no one is even responding to me at all. So they're totally ignoring me, and I'm imploding because I know that my scene the next day is going to be with Paul Newman. I'm going to be in the bar where he picks me up. I can't even say his name without stuttering anyway because it's Paul Newman. So I kind of sit back in my chair and I lose my appetite, and I just kind of sit there wondering, how am I ever going to get anybody's attention when I can't even get them to pass the mustard? So I sit back in my chair and I don't do much, and I'm quiet, and then all of a sudden the person across from me who had the newspaper folds it neatly, sets it down in front of me, and I look up and it's Paul Newman. And he leans over the table and he grabs me by the lapels, lifts me up out of the seat, turns me over on my back and plants me right down on the table, gives me a kiss and says, "Hi, I'm Paul. We'll be working together tomorrow." So it was just a setup, and because when you're young in the business, you're just picked on unmercifully by everybody, and you try not to show it, but believe me, it does. It has a huge effect on you. So the next day I showed up, I couldn't speak. I was really tongue-tied. But all of the people that I worked with, I did a movie with Phyllis Diller, and I got to watch another great comic. I just learned from all of them so much, and because I was so enthusiastic, they took me seriously, and they would take me aside and they'd say, "Look, hon, when you do it next time, do it this way." So I learned very quickly that way. It was great education.
So what was the most memorable TV show or TV performance that you were?
I think the one that is the most memorable is the Chrysler Theater. I worked with Shelley Winters. And I had so admired her as a performer and wanted to be as close to her as I possibly could. And I watched everything that she did, and I learned that there were some actors, especially when you're young starting in the business, that you just watch them and you wait to ask a question, or you wait just to be able to even give them a compliment, because they're not always that approachable. And so that was the case with Miss Winters. So I was able to ease my way into and make a slight friendship with her, and she really took me under her wing, and she showed me all kinds of techniques and things that she does as a performer that she learned really early on in her career. And she was just really hard on other people, and I don't think they really ever understood her. But because I had grown up in the front seat of a car and had observed the personalities of all of these beautiful performers, I had I was comfortable with them even when they were considered difficult. So she was my most favorite person to work with. And then I did several other Chrysler Theater Presents, and that was the beginning of television going from, they were doing movies for television. It was the introduction of longer feature films that would be on television, and they were about an hour long. And the movie that I made with Eddie Mayhoff and Mickey Rooney really was a pilot to begin with that didn't make it. And so anything at Universal, because they were really smart with learning how to, they could get money out of a stone. So they would take all the pilots that hadn't made it, and they would bring the cast back, and they would reshoot other scenes so that it could be then marketed as a feature film and sold again. And Tornado was going to be sold to NBC as a feature film. Yeah.
And what do you think of television today? What do you think of television and film today?
I think that television really offers, especially cable, offers the writers a voice that they have never had before in television, because they don't censor things like they used to, and because the issues that everything that they're writing about, people can relate to. They can see themselves as that character. I think that television has finally broken down all of the barriers in telling stories and reaching all the cultures that we have. Los Angeles has 220 cultures in it. The United Nations has 178. So our town is a perfect melting pot of all these beautiful writers and producers that now come and can tell their story. So I
that was very lovely. Very lovely. Thank you so much,
thank you very
Eileen,
much.
for hanging in there to the end.